Okay, we've got a question over there, yeah. No, no, we don't. Oh yeah, here we are, yes, sorry.
Is it working? Yes.
Yeah.
For the businesses, I have actually two questions. One is, did you identify any intellectual property that you had to protect? And how do you ensure that your business model is not imitated by somebody else? Once it becomes a success, there's going to be people who's going to want to imitate it. So how do you protect that? And is there any process or any process that you had to protect? Get a patent for?
Are you talking about the business as a whole, or
the business as a whole?
Anything?
Yes.
Okay. Ian, or indeed Justine, any particular vital pieces?
Well, we unfortunately didn't get round to it for a long time. So there is another website in our market with a very similar name to us, which does cause immense amounts of confusion at times. But we have now, licensed our logo and our name. Few people have tried to use it over the years. No, the opposite. In fact, even when competitors have linked on our site, we were ruthless in saying, this is the internet, you can't put up walls. You've got to live by how good you are. And we let those links stand, and we didn't stop our users recommending other sites and all that kind of stuff. I think, you have to understand it's very hard to sort of put protective walls up in this environment.
Yeah, I think it's kind of because a lot of these businesses have network effects where, the same network effect that makes you want to invite a friend to Skype also makes it a pain in the neck to switch to another provider other than Skype, right? Or to switch from BT or to switch from Facebook to another social network. And a lot of businesses now have network effects at the core. So I think if you get big enough, fast enough, and you build a strong enough brand, that's kind of your defensibility there, rather than anything more explicit. We have a competitor launch like every week, just copying exactly what we do. And we actually have one really amusing one where we're called Songkick, and this company launched, I guess maybe a year or so after us, called Livekick, doing something very similar. And I was kind of intrigued by whether this was intentional or just some sort of weird accident that people found in companies in concerts thought about this sort of name. So I just started searching around in our user database, and I found that the founder of that company had signed up to our site like 4 months earlier or something, and had obviously done it in a semi-derivative way. But it doesn't matter if you have a good enough product, and you're the kind of you've got the best user experience, you grow faster and you get the lock-in and the network effects. So yeah, I don't think that for many web businesses IP is as relevant.
So just on that point, do you think that first the market is just so valuable, and then trying to take someone out of the market off the back of that is a tough call?
First to market is the key.
How would someone, respectfully, sorry, how would someone take you, well, no, how wouldn't someone take you on, but you'd respect the fact someone taking on what you have would be quite difficult. And also with you, Fraser, as well, with the Jam, you go to Waitrose, and Waitrose is speaking to multinational corporations. They like your idea, but they're taking a lot of trust in you, building up factories, etc. Did you have any fear that they're going to go and speak to these multinationals and say, you know what, Fraser has a great idea. They've taken a lot of risk on you for your age, your background, your experience, etc. They're just going to talk to Coddies or whoever, or Kraft, and give it across to them. Did you have that fear as well?
Well, I guess just on this whole IP thing and protecting your idea and stopping that happening, anybody in this room could go home and buy some tomatoes and some sugar and make some ketchup that tastes as good as, maybe even better than Heinz, but you don't have Mr. Heinz shaking in his boots because they have distribution and they have a brand that people have loved for probably hundreds of years. So I guess by getting your product out there, getting it into shops, on the shelf, and creating a brand that people love and that they trust, protects you from somebody else coming and doing the same thing, because they would have to do something better to displace you, and they would have to get consumers more excited about them than they are about you.
I don't think it's critical. Like, if you look at the two biggest, best companies on the web, pure web businesses, Google and Facebook. Google, was like the 6th big search engine to launch. Facebook came after MySpace, which came after Friendster. I think that it's sort of, you've got to be best in market, and you've got to remain best in market. And Facebook shouldn't have had a chance to succeed, but MySpace just didn't keep making their product any better. So Facebook had a chance. And if you look at interviews with Sean Parker, who was very involved in the early stages of Facebook, he's explicitly said there's no way that Facebook should have succeeded. MySpace should have just improved their product and cut us off at the pass. But
MySpace was run by LA party dudes, and Facebook was run by geeks, and the geeks shall help the earth.
Yeah. Absolutely. The gentleman there, and then we'll take a couple online.
A slight detour as a psychotherapist who uses social media sites. It's more, I suppose, that you, Justine, about this notion of peer support through difficult issues. I know they come up on your site quite often. And just that thing about, we're not in control of that. That's true. But what do you think is the consequence of that? I know that's a big question, but have you had any thoughts about that?
I think you shouldn't underestimate the wisdom of crowds. I think I'm blaming you, Rory. I think, although I think I understand what you're saying in that what if advice isn't very helpful or poor.
The impact of this on us, user-mediated relationships for very vulnerable people are known to work. Telephone helplines for people in crisis.
Yes.
Who want to commit suicide, Samaritans have been around for years.
Brilliant, fantastic stuff. But it seems to this notion of exponential seems to come into play here.
Yeah, it's a very big question, and we have only got 3 minutes to go on it. No. I mean, it's one to pursue maybe afterwards, but I mean, it is about the responsibility for what you do and the consequences of what you do at that exponential rate.
Yes. I mean, all I'd say is I can only really say it is a difficult one and one we think about all the time. But I do think on Mumsnet, bad advice very rarely slips through the net. And it is because you have this kind of quite intelligent crowd and a lot of people. And also I'd say on the whole, people do seem to get helped. We very much say, there's no experts here. It's at your own risk. But lots of people, particularly suicidal people or people with mental issues, really want someone to listen 24/7. And it's not so much, I think, what's said, as long as it's not completely, outrageous. It's the fact that there's someone there listening that is very helpful.
Great. Okay, we've only got a couple more minutes, and strange silence from Southampton University, but quite a lot of activity from New York Public Library. Why does that not surprise us? There's a question here which has come in, and it's a good sort of solid start-up entrepreneurial question from New York Public Library. If I'm working on a new product, how can I best leverage Facebook, increasing traffic to my Facebook page, etc.? There's a follow-on from the Public Library, which is, can the use of social media take the place of traditional advertising to promote your product? So there's two questions really around promotion of your product and your service via social media. Could you just have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess a lot of the time people maybe approach it with this idea that it's just like a different type of media, like TV or newspaper, where you have an opportunity to tell people to buy your product. And I think if you go into it thinking, how can I sell more stuff to people, that's probably not, really the way to go. But if you went into it thinking, there's people out there who are excited about my kind of product, and they might have ideas, and maybe they might buy some product, but they'll have a conversation with me about what I'm doing, and hopefully tell me if I'm doing a good job or what they think. And I think that's probably more valuable. So I guess the part of the question was how to get those people. So it's going to be the people who, a small community when you start out, and they're going to be people who've heard your story, maybe know you personally. So I don't know what the point of trying to sell them something is if they've already come across your product and know you. Just take the opportunity to ask them for advice.
Yeah.
I think that the most practical advice I can give you is figure out what people would want to share about your product. So, for example, on Mumsnet, there might be a really interesting comment thread on how this thing kills otters. Make it easy for people to share that. Put a Facebook like button, put a Facebook share, put a tweet button. Just put an email this to your friend button. Make it easy. And then I think the most sort of aggressive structural change that's happening is a lot of new internet businesses are actually making it impossible to use the product if you don't share by default, right? So the model there would be you cannot use Mumsnet unless you share everything that you consume on there with your friends on Facebook. And that's really the way that Facebook are, and a lot of Facebook are trying to push a lot of the web in that kind of mentality because that leads to the most distribution of content.
Great.
That's hard.
Great. Well, look, we are drawing to a close now, I'm afraid. So to all of those watching online and in Southampton, in New York, thank you for your participation. I'm sorry we weren't able to take all of your questions, but I'm sure that the conversation, as it properly should, is going to continue long and late into the night. And maybe our panellists will take part in it and answer your questions if they can. I'd just like to conclude by reminding you, please, to fill in your feedback forms. I think you can also fill them in online. I hope I'm right on that. Please fill them in fully and sign them, because that's the way that the British Library can continue to orchestrate evenings like this and provide the amazing services for entrepreneurs that it does. Before we go, I think we should thank a fantastic panel. It's been a wide-ranging, fascinating conversation. So, to all of you, thank you. Final note from the New York Public Library: it is so refreshing and typically British to see you all so self-deprecating. Well, you don't deserve to be self-deprecating. Thank you very much indeed, and enjoy the rest of the evening.